All right, we are going to make, excuse me, we're going to make the dice. Now, when you're making the dice, don't stress yourself out on this one. If it's done correctly, the center point here and when you measure up here, these should all come together perfectly. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's, excuse me, but that's how it should work. Okay. Uh, Let me show you a couple tricks here that we can do. So what we could do is we can extend, we can start off, always keep the base of the triangle on the baseline. We can extend these lines down a little bit. All right, this is where it started. And we can start by just extending these lines down a little bit. Okay, you'll see why we need those in just a minute. Now what we can do is we could take the very bottom here where these lines come together. And of course, I didn't say this, but I started with the layout box. You always start with the layout box. All right, and I measure up 1 inch. So this one's very precise. Again, if it's not perfect, I will still accept it. It just tends to be one of the more difficult ones because every line is being transferred from another point of reference, which means that if one line is off, the next line will be off, and the next line will be off, right? So it is difficult to get this thing 100% perfect, but do not stress. Okay, so I measured back about 1 inch. Now, what we want to do here is we should measure back about 1 inch onto here. Okay, so from here to here should be roughly 1 inch. And it is, okay, roughly. Okay, so if I were to bring this line up and then bring this line back, I've created a square there. Oops. Sorry, my line's a little bit off here. My pencil's not quite sharp enough. Okay, I've created the square. So the square that you see here is the square that I made right there. Okay, so I'm going to show you the same thing on the other side. Right, this should be roughly 1 inch, and it is. Okay. Okay, all I'm doing is this point here where they met up. I'm going to go up here, right, erase the rest of that I don't need. And then I'm going to go back here. Okay, pretty simple. So I created the 2 outsides and like the 2 inside pieces right there. Okay. A lot of this is actually pretty simple. The rest of this is actually pretty simple. We're just going to follow some lines back and then just kind of keep going. Right. So we're going to start over on this side and just bring this line on back. So if you look, I kind of created like there's one side there, there's one side there, there's one side there, right? Same thing with this. Just bring that line back. Okay. So you see like a block here, you see like a block here. I created this block, I created this block. Right. All this other stuff here, kind of just unnecessary at this point. Right. And then the last part of this is really simple. We go from this point here, bring it back. Okay, the center should already be done for us. This point here, bring it back. Okay, I can tell you right now that this side looks a little bit different in size than this side. Again, if you don't get this perfect, it's okay. It's all right. I'm doing this really quick, so measurement's gonna be a little bit off, but for the most part, it'll be accurate. All right. Go ahead and make sure those lines are nice and straight. A little thicker than I'd like, but there they are. Now, bring this line down. Start at this corner, bring this line down. And start at this corner, bring this line down. Okay. So again, like I said before, when we transfer these lines, they're not going to be, they should be, it should make a perfect square. And because the measurements are not 100% accurate, like they are, like for instance, when I did this one, when I made this one, I actually used a mechanical pencil, very sharp tip, right? Literally a 16th of an inch, an eighth of an inch, and these will be off. Don't stress yourself out over this. It's completely fine, right? The idea is that you get kind of the right image, right? So the center point here, this point here matches up with this point in here, which is exactly what we're looking for. If you want to go back and just darken up the lines that are necessary, you can do that. Get rid of the lines that are not necessary. It's that simple, okay? So again, this one could be a little tricky because, like I said, every line is being referenced off of a previous line, so it can be a little bit different. Unlike the one next to it, the T block, like if you measure this ½ inch wrong or you measure this ½ inch wrong, you could still draw these lines back and they'll still look somewhat accurate because they're not referenced off of each other. But this one, if any one of these isn't perfectly 1 inch, which obviously this isn't, then what's going to happen is you're going to get some overlap, right? Or if you have a pencil that's not quite sharp enough. All right, but this is acceptable. This does work for what we are doing. All right, and that is how you make the dice.